he's been currently working as a director for internal innovations at Clalit Health Services, which is one of the biggest providers of healthcare services in Israel, with almost 5 million customers, right? And so, in given this introduction, I am sure each and every participant will appreciate why this talk will be very, very important to get insights from someone who is leading innovation at one of the biggest healthcare services, healthcare providers in the startup nation, as we call Israel, where innovation is we've seen so many innovations and so many new ideas coming from the country. So it'll be very, very interesting for all of us to learn about, gain some insights from this talk today. Before that, just a couple of lines on the talk what Shakaf intends to cover, but he'll obviously dwell deeper into it. But as he put it, all the organizations and their customers are having dialogues with each other for the last 100, years. And these dialogues then take a dynamic shape of business innovation models. And these are up for disruption in instances like these pandemics or the shocks that we get in our economy, in our society. So how these dialogues are going to change, how this whole business innovation models, how this innovation models are going to change, how this business innovation in itself is going to change because of COVID and post-COVID is something that would form the crust of his talk today. So over to you, Shakaf. Very, very excited to learn from you, hear from you, and look forward to our conversation and to the talk. So we'll have around 45, 50 minutes where you can carry on with the session. Then we'll have around 15, 20 minutes where the audience can raise few questions, and I'm sure a lot of them will have a lot of thoughts that they want to ask you, a lot of questions that they want to ask. So over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking the time on your day off to come and listen to talk about innovation. One of the things that I talked about with Akshay as we prepared for this talk is it really, how do you talk about innovation, which is a very high level value, and connect it to a reality that is very difficult in Israel, especially in India, much more than in Israel. How can you create an authentic dialogue around that? How can you really talk about innovation when people are locked at home and are afraid to go outside? And eventually we decided that this is exactly what we should talk about. The way that this reality shapes the way we talk about innovation. Because if this talk would have happened 6 months ago, you would have different questions and I would have different answers. And I think that this new context that we find ourselves in is something that is definitely worth talking about, especially when it comes to innovation. So thank you, Sanid, for this intro. Basically, when I look in the last 10 years in the work that I've been doing around innovation, one of the things that I found very clearly is that there is something that I call a commitment gap between what we are committed to and the reality that basically is created by our actions. And this gap is something that we can find in our personal lives, and this is something that we find in organizations that we work in. It's very natural. One of the places that you find it the clearest is around corporate innovation, because any organization you would find it believes in innovation. Organizations write it in their visions, they write it on their walls, they print it on their T-shirts, but eventually in the day-to-day life, organizations are designed to stifle innovation and kill innovation. And what I've been doing in the past 10 years as a consultant for organizations, or as someone that's working inside organizations like Amdocs, like Clalit, is trying to figure out how can we bridge this commitment gap? How can we help organizations walk the talk and 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 uh, and fulfill the commitment that they are really committed to very authentically, but they don't have the tools, best practices to implement them. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years or so. And one of the things that I found in that period of time is that innovation is a field that is comprised of many moving parts. There's a lot of stuff that influence the way we run innovation. It's the culture, it's the business model, it's the industry, it's the managers, it's the leadership. There's a lot of moving parts that define the way you run innovation in your organization. One of the things that I found is the most important of these moving parts is our dialogue with customers. In some cases, this is a very profound, meaningful, and effective dialogue, and in most cases, it's not. And I want to talk about this dialogue because I think that this dialogue is shaping our innovation in the day-to-day life. And in these days, in these crazy times of plague, of pandemic, of heat waves, this dialogue is changing, and it's something that we really need to look at and understand. So to look at that, I want to talk about three contexts. One is the industry context, another is the organization context, and the third is the people context. And I want to argue that the dialogue that I'm talking about, the B2C dialogue, is something that is changing a lot during these past 100 years or so, 150 years. In order to really understand why is this shift that we're experiencing now, I feel that we're experiencing now, is so profound and so important because I think that it rejects a trend that has been growing and building for the past 150 years. And now I'm seeing something that it looks different. Maybe it takes us a few steps back. And to really understand that, I think we need to go back and figure out did that dialogue start and how did it change along the years. By the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to cut me off. I'd love it to have this as a conversation. I will keep time. I will make sure that we're keeping time. So if you have questions, please ask. So we have three different contexts. Now, if we're looking at innovation from a historical point of view, for many years, for decades, innovation was disconnected from customers altogether. And the reason for that is that for many years, innovation was more attributed to the production sector than services. And in services, you talk to customers, and in the production sector, again, historically speaking, no one talked to customers. That's why there was no real dialogue with customers when leading innovation. And one of the explanations that Tim Brown is the CEO of IDEO, one of the leading companies in the world today around design thinking and innovation management. He says that from a historical point of view, the production sector deals with machines. Again, historically speaking, it's not what's happening now. While the service sector deals with people. This concept, which again is not relevant today, but it was relevant for many years, created this paradigm. And the paradigm is, if I want to run innovation, I can make my machines better. But if I want to make my service better, I need more resources. And there's nothing to do with people in order to do that. I just need more resources. Now, this concept, this paradigm, basically started at the beginning of the modern innovation as we know it, which started in the Industrial Revolution. And in that Industrial Revolution, one of the people that led this perception was Thomas Edison, also known as the Wizard of Menlo Park. He basically created the first R&D lab. Right? He took a lot of very smart people. They put him in one room. You can see it in the picture. Guess what? You won't find the customer in the picture, right? A lot of very talented people Customers are not part of the equation. And he promised the world, I would give you a new innovation every 10 days and a breakthrough every 6 months. And he delivered. And one of the reason I'm talking about that is because it was the point that organizations understood that they need to create a pipeline of innovation. That's the first time that someone actually said, we need to have innovation, we need to plan it, we need to have a pipeline, and that would lead profits, that would lead to success. And in that period, organizations first started competing against each other based on their innovation. That's when patents became into life. That's when the concept of NDAs were created. Basically, organizations tried to create knowledge and protect it, which makes sense, right? And again, for many, many years, the Industrial Revolution, which was hinged in the production sector, right, not necessarily in services, led innovation based on technology to create better products, faster products, with better technology. And that was the way you can create innovation. But if you want to create a better service, you need more resources. And resources are constraints. And customers, for many, many years, were perceived as constraints. That's why they were shut aside. That was the reality until 1967. Because in 1967, that happened. 1967 was the first time in history that a service provider created an innovative contact with a customer through technology. That was the first time that technology was an enabler to give better services. In this case, banking, which I will touch upon much later. And that was a pivotal point when it comes to innovation history, because that was the point where the production sector and the service sector started competing against each other for better technology, creating better experiences. And in that period of time, I think that the lines between products and services began to blur, right? Because even the production sector realized that even if I create an amazing product, I still need to back it up with a great service and vice versa. So today, when we're talking about grabbing a cup of beer, you can debate if it's a product or a service, right? Some people actually use it as a product. I'm just buying the beer. I enjoy a beer. This is what I'm drinking at home. Other people would buy the same beer, but would expect service with it, right? The whole experience around beer, whether it's in their houses or in a bar. So the moment these lines began to blur, and organizations understood that they need to compete to create better experiences combined with products and services, that's when customers became much more important in this equation, and their dialogue with them became more important. But that's just from an industry point of view, okay? The second context is organizations change. And organizations change because one of the things that happened in the past couple of decades is that the information revolution changed the relationship with customers. It did that because the moment customers had so much information, it was easier for them to switch organizations, to leave, right? So I'm moving you a bit so you'll see what's written here. But basically what that means is, if for many years organizations just wanted a loyal, passive customer that just pays pays for the product or service and leaves us alone, as time passed, organizations understood they can't keep their customers. Customers have their opinions, customers will leave faster than ever, and organizations need to empower their customers in order to keep them alive, to keep them with them, which is in many ways a paradox. And I'll give you an example, a few examples. So one example which I really love, and again, this is just one example of a lot of examples that you can find out there. I think that Citi was the first bank that gave its customers the ability to manage their own investments. Now, today it sounds pretty trivial, but if you think about it, for many, many years, the whole field of banking was shaded by a cloud of terminology that no one understood, long contracts that no one understood, and we just signed it without really understanding what we're signing about. No one knew where his money is, and we had no financial freedom. What Citi understood, and after that, many organizations said that it understood that they need to forfeit their power over customers to keep the customers with them, saying, if you want to invest money, we will help you do that. We know that you're not a specialist. If you want, we can give you tips. But if you don't want, that's also fine, because we understand that it's your money. And once we empower you, you will keep using our services, not because you have to, not because you don't know what it means to work to move to another bank because you're trapped in some kind of contract. It's in your best interest to stay with us because it makes you bigger, and it's not trivial. By the way, you can find it this paradigm also in healthcare, which is the industry that I'm currently working with. For many years, doctors didn't explain to you what's wrong with you. The data was theirs. You had no transparency over your treatment or the level of information that led to the decision for you to take one drug or another, or a hospitalization or another. And now we're seeing more and more examples of health organizations that try to empower their customers, giving them data, giving them the freedom to choose, and being part of their care along the years. So this is one cool example. Another example is this. This is a campaign drove by I lost the name. McDonald's. McDonald's said, we want to give you the option to choose whatever you want to put in your hamburger. Again, it may sound trivial, but think about it. If this organization was built on efficiency, on becoming a machine that is repetitive and efficient and basically fast, that's the first and foremost promise that they give their customers. What does that mean when this organization, which is very successful, by the way, says, we want to forfeit our efficiency. We know it will take us more time to bring you this hamburger because there's some variables and we need to tailor it to whatever you want. It's fine. But we know that it's important for you to choose your hamburger. So we want to forfeit the most competitive advantage that we have, which is efficiency and time, in order to help you choose. And again, these campaigns, if you're going back to the beginning of our talk, these campaigns are hinged on dialogues with customers. The understanding that customers find it important to choose, and for that they are willing to give up and forfeit a lot of stuff that organizations initially thought that are much more important than anything else. Which brings me to the last thing that is changing, and basically that is us. Again, our expectations from organizations change. So we are not content anymore with waiting for organizations to bring us the products that we want. We want to be heard. We want to impact the way products and services are made and the way they're delivered to us. And it's so important to us that in some cases, if organizations will not do that for us, we will do it ourselves. Which brings us to an extreme example of innovation led by users, which is user innovation, and I will touch that in a minute. So what we're saying is this. We as customers will no longer compromise for our needs. We don't need to. If you don't fulfill them, we will move to another organization. It's easier than ever before. whether it's any kind of service provider, any kind of product, very easy to move. And again, in places that we find that our needs are not met, we will answer our needs ourselves. And that brings us to user innovation. So user innovation happens when customers say, I have a need. It's so important to me. I will solve it myself. And in some cases, I will actually create a product out of it or a service out of it and offer it to other users. One of the interesting examples of user innovation is Quirky. Quirky is an invention platform. Check it out. It's really, really cool. What this platform does is it invites users, sorry, not customers, users, to come up with innovative solutions that they find answer their own need, right? It might be a latent need for most users. It might be representative of a very small audience, a need that maybe some organizations find it very small ROI investing in it, and still it's a need. They can go into the platform, they can develop this solution with other people via the web. There's a lot of people working on this platform, and in that platform they can develop it, design it, create it, and sell it. Actually create it and sell it. And this is just one example of one of the solutions that were created in this platform. Look at the numbers before I move forward. Just up until 2009 and today, they've created more than 150 products, services, and innovations that are open to the public and anyone can buy. This is a huge innovation pipeline. Not many organizations can say that they have this kind of pipeline of innovations. So the picture that you're seeing here is, I don't know how many of you have small kids and you're waking up at night to feed them. I've had this experience. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's part of the deal. And this person said, I'm getting up in the middle of the night. I'm trying to pour the formula. I'm not truly awake, not 100% awake. I'm struggling in the dark. I'm spilling the formula. What if I had a machine that would prepare the formula for me, all digitized? All I need to do is put the bottle in the machine. It will create the formula. It will even measure the right amount of formula. It will track the number of bottles that I'm making. It can feed my smartphone with how much bottles did my kid took and when. It would help me manage my feeding process, and when the formula ends, before it ends, it sends an automatic message to Amazon asking for more formula before it ends. I'm just outsourcing the whole process of creating formula. Now you might say, I don't know if there's a market to it, not a market to it, I don't know. It's very niche, maybe, I don't know. And still, this is the blockbuster with Quirky, because it answered a real need, and people were proactive enough to answer it and develop a solution for it. So this is a digital example, but you can find other examples. So MakerLabs is just one example of this makers movement that we're seeing out there, of people that are creating solutions that answer their needs, whether they want to commercialize them or not. That's fine. MakerLabs is a unique example, because there you can walk into a room that is basically Alice in Wonderland for anyone that wants to make anything. You can walk in, you can create your solution, and inside this complex, there are also places you can actually sell the solution to other people if they want to buy it. So user innovation basically means, in this dialogue between customers and organizations, in cases where the dialogue is not effective, customers take responsibility and create solutions that fit their own need. Basically, making my point that this dialogue is very important, because if we don't answer our customers' needs, they will answer them for themselves. So let's recap, okay, on this history lesson. Quick history in innovation. We're seeing a shift. So we talked about industries, organizations, and people, and historically speaking, what we're seeing is that industries, okay, industries designed the way organizations are today. They designed the formation of R&D departments and conversations and dialogue with customers and so on. And these organizations basically dictated to come to customers what to consume and how, right? But now we're seeing a shift. Now we're seeing a shift where customers are much more proactive and vocal when it comes to what needs to be produced and what service needs to be given. And this kind of changes organizations, the basic premises that organizations live by, and that creates new industries like makers and new realities. Now, this dialogue, as I'm portraying so far, is something that's been happening for the past 150 years, and we're seeing this very clear movement, right? So if I want to create this spectrum, on the one hand, there is paternalism, which is where we started from in the Industrial Revolution. Organizations wanted to control their customers. They wanted to dictate what they will consume, and it worked. And all through the years, so as time passed by, we saw this shift. Organizations started talking about transparency, just showing customers what's happening and why we're doing the things that we do. They started talking about empowerment, and eventually they even started talking about trust and best case scenario, shared values. Again, to create a better dialogue with customers. At the edge of this spectrum, we will find empathy. This strange word that we like to talk about, where organizations really want to understand their customers and their experiences. So this is the spectrum, and all through the years, we're seeing this shift, right? This movement from paternalism slowly through to empowerment, trust, shared values, empathy. This movement changes between organizations, between industries, that's fine, but we're seeing it very clearly, I would argue. But here's the thing. Something happened to us a couple of months ago. Okay, it's called Corona. And this plague, I want to argue, changed profoundly this trend. Because I found that organizations in this period of time found themselves in a fight or flight situation. Okay? Corona put everyone, all of us, in this fight or flight situation where organizations fighting for survival change the way that they talk to their customers. I would argue that we're just talking to them less. And I would say that this situation is pivotal, not just for your innovation, but for your survival. And I want to share with you how I dealt with that as part of Clalit Health Services. And one of the things that I found, and this is amazing, when we're looking at this plague and what's happening during it. I looked at all the innovations that have been happening there in Israel. A lot of innovation, a lot of processes, new processes, new procedures, new technologies, new products, new services. We had startups coming from all over the world, creating value. And it was amazing to see that although we had so much innovation running, the customer wasn't part of the process. No one talked to the customer. And no one asked him, what does he need? In my case, it's the patient. In my case, it's the people that are sick with corona, either hospitalized at home or hospitalized in hospitals. No one talked to them, not one. which for me was amazing, which led me to run a design thinking process, uh, targeting people that are hospitalized at home. We had hundreds of people, thousands of people sick at home, experiencing a very traumatic experience. Now, in order to understand this process, I want to give just to talk just a moment about design thinking and explain what that is, and then share with you what that helped me achieve in Israel. Up until now, are there any questions? Okay. Okay.
Oh, folks, if you want to ask any questions, maybe you can just unmute and just
Unmute or use the chat, whatever works for you, because it's a lot to take in what I've been talking about so far.
So, Shafak, Mahesh here had a question, and he has sent it over chat. He wants to ask how easy or difficult it is to create IP around the services and without the product innovation.
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I'm following.
How easy or difficult is it to create IP around services, intellectual property around services? And a follow-up to that is without the product innovation. So it's only services, if that's what I understand correctly.
Yeah. So I'm not an IP expert, but I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't remember any example of a service IP that I saw, any patent on service that I saw. I think that it's very, very challenging to protect. And I think that when you connect it, when you couple it with any technology, it makes it much easier, without a doubt. But again, I'm not an expert. Maybe we have people on the line that are more experienced in IP.
Can I just intervene?
Excuse me?
And you can have IP, especially not in India, but in US, you can get what I call a business method patents. You can have a trademark or a service mark, and you can also have copyright. And it is all contextual. Depending on the case, you can suggest what can be done.
It's possible. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not sure who gave that comment, but thank you so much, sir, for your comments. The second question that we have: what do you see as the 5 top blockers of innovation?
The 5 top blockers of innovation.
Yes.
Are we talking about, so innovation is a very loud word. I think that we'll have different blockers when the context change. So corporate innovation is one context, startup is another context, a national point of view is another context. So it really depends. So let's assume that we're talking about corporate innovation, and we're talking about the context of organization just because that's the name of the forum. I would say that the first one is leadership. It always is. And I think that the second one is this connection with customers. I think that it's a very powerful blocker. And third is the organizational DNA. Even if I have an amazing dialogue with customers, even if I have an amazing manager, CEO that shifts the organization, I think that organizations are designed for repetitiveness, and they are built as performance engines. So I think that the mere fact that organizations are designed for efficiency, basically, it's one of the blockers. And this design, this DNA, has a lot of ways it manifests in the organizational tempo, in processes, in decision making, and so on. So These are the top three.
Okay, perfect. I think the rest of the questions, I think they're coming on the chat box, but we can take it later. Maybe we could proceed with the talk here. And
Okay, so
I just saw that it was Raj sir who responded to the IP question. Thank you, sir. Maybe Shafaq, you can continue, and then we can take the questions at the end of the session. Yeah.
cool. So I'm continuing. So a bit about design thinking, and I apologize to all the Amdocs employees on the line that might have heard me talk about this for a million times. I apologize. You can go and make coffee now. No sauce. Seriously, stay tuned. This is basically a definition that anchored the Amdocs approach to design specifically, and in general, you find it in many organizations. Design thinking is basically a human-centered approach to problem solving that is collaborative and creative and iterative and practical. I can talk about this definition for at least 2 days. Some of the people on the line have heard me talk about this definition for 2 days or more, but I won't do that. I will tell you a story that kind of exemplifies the power of design thinking and how that really works. So this guy is Doug. It's called Doug Dietz. True story. This is the real person, and Doug is an industrial designer. And during his period in GE, he designed this product. This is an award-winning, amazing CT machine that won all the awards for design. Got amazing feedback from customers, from organizations, and Doug's managers are really happy with him until he decided to have this tour and actually talk to his customers and hear from them what do they experience. And again, he went to hospitals and he talked to nurses and physicians, and everyone was extremely happy with this machine until one day when during one of the conversations that he had with one of the nurses, she asked him to step out because there's a patient coming in. And he stepped out into this long corridor that you find in hospitals, and he sees Tracy. Tracy is a 7-year-old kid. She walks in this corridor holding her parents with both hands, and she's walking very slowly, kind of a death walk. And she stops with her parent outside the MRI room, and before they walk in, the parent, her father, kneels to her and say, "Tracy, I need you to be brave today. Because you promised." And she nods because she doesn't really have a choice, right? And and she walks in, and the moment she walks in, she starts crying hysterically. So Doug rushes into the room, and what he sees is a very traumatic experience of Tracy on the floor, crying her heart out, truly hysterical. The physicians, they can't calm her. The parents, they don't know what to do with themselves. And what Doug does at this point is basically from my experiences, the essence of design thinking. He kneels beside Tracy, and he actually sees the room literally for the first time from Tracy's perspective. And he notices the yellow lines on the floor and the flickering fluorescent lights and the warning signs of skulls on the walls. And he understands that his machine is the base of a very traumatic experience. And I will continue this story in a minute, but I really like this example because we talk a lot about empathy, and frankly, we know, guys, we're not designed for empathy. We're not designed to really experience what other people are experiencing. We are very much into ourselves. It's natural, that's the way we are, and it's very challenging to make this step. So that's why I'm really inspired by the fact that Doug, when he experienced this experience with Tracy, stepped out of the hospital and decided he's going to redesign his whole machine, create a different experience. Now, what happened to Doug at that point is that his context changed, and that's what empathy does. Empathy creates a different context around your service, around your product, and that enables you to answer different answers to questions like, who is my real customer? What are his problems, and how can I help them solve it? And how can I help them solve it, and who can help us solve it for them? So what Doug did is he created a new team of parents and kids and physicians, and they created a new experience. Now, one of the amazing things that they found in their research that they conducted is this: 80% out of the kids that go to MRI exams are being sedated, not because the exam demands it, because kids are so frightened that they can't stand still. So the exam doesn't work. That's one thing. The second thing that he understood, again, by interviewing kids and really trying to understand their experience, what he realized is that the most challenging part of going to an MRI exam is knowing that you need to go to this disgusting machine while your friends, 7-year-olds, remember, are playing in the yard at this point. This gap between the fun that my friends are having and this nightmare that I'm stuck in, this gap is too much to bear. So what if, said Doug, we can create a different experience? And this experience starts with an invitation that the kid gets to a treasure hunt, not an MRI exam. And he walks into the room of the MRI, and he sees this whole new experience based on the same machine. This is the same machine, guys. And he sees the physicians, they're all dressed up like pirates, and they ask him to jump onto the canoe. It's not an MRI exam, it's a canoe. And if he stands still, you can see the fish going above him. And they actually drew fishes inside the MRI. And the kids are hysterical and they're ecstatic and they're frozen because they don't want to miss the fish. And the moment they step out of this machine, they get this gold coin with their name engraved on it. And it's the time of their life. And they have different concepts. They have like flying to the moon and going camping and yellow submarine and so on and so on. Different experiences tailored to the customer. Now just check out this win-win-win situation, right? So the patient has this huge win. The win is he has this traumatic experience, just stricken from his day, and instead he has this amazing experience. He can go back to his friends with this gold coin and say, "Ha ha! I went to an MRI exam and you didn't," right? Parents, just like a fun day in the gymboree. In hospitals, they had a couple of wins. One, this is a unique value proposition that they can provide to customers, which provide them a competitive advantage over other hospitals. That's one. The second, hospitals that implemented this machine reduced the number of sedated kids from 80% to 10%, which is a huge shift in the way you can use the doctors that specialize in sedation. You can cater more customers and so on. This is an amazing win. Now the thing is about design thinking that it's not really a superpower. Anyone can do it. Even us at Amdocs have done it before, and we're doing it now at Clalit. It's a very structured process, and it's a methodology, and organizations are using it across the world. What I did is use that to create solutions during the Corona plague that happened in Israel. And one of the things that led this process is understanding that it's not enough to make sure that you have a solution that is viable from a business point of view, or in my case, a clinical point of view. And it's not enough to make sure that we can build it, meaning it's feasible from a technological point of view. People must want it, right? People must want it. And the only way to do that is to talk to them in a different way, creating a different dialogue. Again, it has its best practices and its rules. And from this different dialogue, you can create different insights and lead meaningful innovation. So again, we took this process and we did a very fast process, very intensive process that took 2 weeks. Normally, design thinking processes can take between 3 months to a year, depends on the complexity of the challenge, like real processes that can actually deliver solutions. And we try to improve the experience of home treatment for corona patients. And again, we went and we talked to people. I apologize for the Hebrew, but it doesn't really matter. The names are right. Of course the pictures are made up, keeping their privacy. We talked to these people, and we tried to figure out what is the real experience of being hospitalized at home in a situation where you are forced not just to disconnect from the world, but from your family. Remember, these are patients, these are sick corona people. It's not people that are quarantined, not just. They are sick, they are contagious, they're stuck at home. And we found this amazing magnitude of challenges that from a clinical point of view, we didn't see it. We talked to people that needed help getting the garbage down. And they couldn't leave the house. People got stuck with garbage in their house. They couldn't throw it away. We had people that they're fine, but they're caregivers. They take care of their family, of their parents. And their parents are in a different city. They can't take care of them. What do they do now? They had so many questions that no one knew how to answer. And basically, one of the biggest traumas when it comes to corona is that you become sick, and you know when you started being sick, but you have no idea when the disease will end. You don't know. It can take 2 weeks, it can take a month, it can take more. You don't know if you will become extremely ill, then you will need to be hospitalized. How do you know if you become extremely ill? Now, these people, they had their contact person inside Clalit, but the information was never enough. And what we did is we talked to them, and we had a lot of insights, and we filtered those insights, and we worked with those insights, and we used them to fuel a new process of brainstorming. This process of brainstorming would never have become possible without new insights. And that brainstorming, again, remember, it's collaborative, so it was a process that had multidisciplinary people from different parts of the organization. We had services, and we had IT, and a lot of people inside the room, and of course physicians. And we came up with 3 solutions. One solution, just checking the time, we have 4 more minutes, so I'll make it fast. We had 3 solutions tailored for corona. One is the option to consult with doctors in a synchronic way via a phone, but also consult with other patients via the same form. We had the solution of Corona Buddy, where you have this dedicated focal point from the organization, which is not a clinical focal point, but he is your personal focal point, the one that answers all your questions, whether it's clinical, whether it's emotional, one person that answers all your worries. And the last one is an onboarding kit. Basically an onboarding kit that says, you've just entered the process of being hospitalized at home. This is what you should expect. These are the questions. This is how you should keep fit. These are the links to the videos you should look at. This is what you should expect. These solutions are being validated as we speak. We validated them internally in the organization. We validated them, of course, with patients. We changed their design after our discussions with patients. And I think next week we're having another discussion to talk about budget and which one of these which one of these ideas to follow up. Up until now, by the way, Corona at home, we killed it. We couldn't find any good feedback from it, from patients or from customers, from physicians. And Corona Buddy and Corona onboarding, these are definitely solutions that we want to promote, and we have the buy-in inside the organization. So, takeaways. Your dialogue with customers, basically that designs your innovation. And you should keep it open. You should keep it open even in the face of plagues, even in the face of pandemics, even in the face of heat waves, especially these times. You need to keep your dialogue with your customers open and fluent in order to bring the relevant product and the relevant service. Don't give in to this fight or flight experience. Make sure that you keep your customers close in order to keep them closer after this. Crazy times will pass, and they will. That's the takeaway. Now I'm open for questions.
Great, Shachaf. Thank you so much. I think we already have a couple of questions coming in the chat window. There was an earlier question. We can take that. But before that, are there any other points that you would like to mention? It's okay if you take a few more minutes. I think that should be okay with the audience. Up to you. Or do you want to go ahead with questions?
I think I've talked enough.
Okay. It was very insightful. Thank you so much. I think one of the earlier questions that came from Kunal, he wanted to ask, do you see any significant or more open innovation culture post the pandemic, especially in the pharma sector?
Yes. Yes. Do you want details? Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is hell yes. So one of the things that happened during the Corona pandemic is that we proved to ourselves, we surprised ourselves with our ability to work fast with startups and to work fast with employees. We found walls between silos inside the organization crumble for the first time. We saw heavy regulation processes that became extremely fast. We saw it was very, very easy to reach a pilot as long as it answers a real need and it's immediate and it's effective. So yes, I think that what we've learned is that we need to be much more open, much more collaborative, and we can. I think that's the biggest lesson. So because we knew theoretically that it must be done, but now we actually experienced that it can be done in the face of turmoil, and one of the biggest action items that we took from this experience is we must perceive, we must keep this way of work after, and open innovation is definitely part of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another question that's coming again from Mahesh. He wants to check for any change to happen, finding early adopters is very important. Now he wanted some of your ideas and thoughts on how to identify these customers from a services standpoint. So from a service industry standpoint or services standpoint. I mean, how do you identify the early adopters or some of these customers from services standpoint? If you could have some of your thoughts and ideas on
that. So it really depends on the context. So first of all, one of the things that design thinking does very well is make sure that you're starting by looking at the most relevant customer segment. So in this case, Corona patients were the customer segment, right? But it's very specific because we have a lot of all kinds of patients. So one way, I'm just looking at this example. One way that we try to identify early adapters is saying, okay, let's say that we have this onboarding kit. This physical kit that helps you onboard the experience of being hospitalized at home as a corona patient. Who would use has the most value out of it? And once you have this basic question, it's easier to find the early adapters. In my case, the early adapters would be elderly people that are not as digital as the rest of us, so it will be easier for them to get the information physically. Orthodox Jews that have a lot of restrictions when it comes to going online and going into different websites. So they are also they don't have all the information that they need, and so on. So once we asked who would get the most value out of this solution, it was very easy for us to identify the early adapters for this specific solution.
Okay. Great. So one more question coming in from Nilesh. He is asking if you can please share innovation accelerators which can be used to respond to dynamic situation in a short time. So in case of current scenario, the COVID, so it was a really very dynamic situation in terms of business, in terms of how we were living, how we are managing our activities, and so on and so forth. So, what could be the innovation accelerators that one could use from a corporate standpoint to respond to such kind of situations?
So, wow, there are many, internally and externally. So I'll give you one example of an an accelerator that is external. We had a lot of campaigns where we invited the startups and companies to offer their solutions. At one point, this rationale of creating accelerators became in a national level, where we had this center of control on a national level, where corporates from all across the country came together with the army. In Israel, the army has very, very advanced units for R&D and research, and connecting to startups. They created this hub where they brought in so many needs coming in from the field and connected it with solutions coming in from the ecosystem, supported by money coming in from the Ministry of Health. And this concept basically was created more or less inside Clalit. We systematically try to find needs coming in from the field, from all kinds, and systematically connect it to solutions that are out there, that are being vetted very fast, very agile, and promoted to pilots. So I think that this is one of the most important accelerators that I found. On an internal point of view, I think that the concept of keeping stand-up meetings and joint meetings that bridge organizational silos on a daily basis, where people just sit down and go over their joint processes with IT, with hospital managers, with clinic managers, with innovation people, sitting around one conversation, even if it's a Teams meeting, on a daily basis. That was very simple, and it accelerated processes magnificently. So, and there are many more, but basically it's always about keeping it open and creating as many connections as possible.
Great. I don't know if there are any further questions. Any more questions? Anyone?
I think Sanit Krishnan has posted one.
Okay, one second. I'll just quickly check.
It was not really a question, Rahul.
No, it's not a question.
Not really a
Akshay.
question. It's an observation. One of the things that I observe is that a lot of things that work in a crisis situation are not going to work when you get back to normal times. So I think we are doing, organizations are doing a hell of a lot of things to manage the crisis, and they need to focus on how could we do many of these practices post-COVID? And I think that no one is being prepared for. One of the biggest questions. So when I check out, or as a consultant, we check for people, is that no one is prepared for the post-COVID world. We are doing a lot of things now. And this is something that everyone has to remember. There is a very different way of acting in a crisis time and in normal time. And so don't assume that what works now will work in the post-COVID world.
I agree.
Great. I'll just check if there's someone has posted. Shit. So Senthil has posted a question. Firstly, he likes to thank you for the great insights. I mean that you provided, and the shift, that empathy and creator, and all those points that you very precisely highlighted. His question is: India is a country with diversified people and needs. What is the process to follow for product to find the one which can make things work?
Well, a couple of thoughts. So first of all, looking at the processes that I've, so I think that Israel is very diverse as well. I can't compare, but we are very diverse, and I think that when you're looking at trying to find a product that works, you start by asking who should it work for. So if you think, I know that India is very diverse, but let's say there's a lot of characteristics that create this diversity, right? One of the things that you should ask when you're developing a product is what are the main characteristics that distinguish between someone that is relevant to the product that you want to develop or not. Another question is which segment is the most profitable? It's the biggest, it has the clearest needs, and so on. And once you find this segment, and by the way, normally it's smaller than you think, you can find a solution that answers a real need. Now here's the thing. It sounds like a paradox, but it's not. The fact that you focused on a very specific population and you came up with a solution, it doesn't mean that it won't bring value to other populations. It does mean that if you initially focus on the generic customer, for women, okay, women is a generic customer. Every women are alike, all men are alike, let's focus on men, right? So it doesn't make any sense. It'll be very harder for us to bring value to a population, to a customer segment that is very large and has no kind of mutual connection, no baseline that they can connect to. And once you are more specific, and sometimes this is what happens in design thinking, the population becomes clearer. Then from in-depth processes, you have the ability to create a product that makes difference for them.
Perfect. I don't think that we have any further questions, so I think we could close here. Or anyone has any last question? Okay, maybe I'll just conclude then. Thank you so much, Shachaf. Really very interesting, very insightful session about first focusing on the history perspective, and also then helping us with some of the examples and case studies, and also then talking about what your organization is doing and how it has quickly came up with innovations focused on the customers in a very short span during this pandemic. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful to have you here, and I know you must be busy given the organization that you work in, and it's carrying out the health services across Israel. So thank you so much again for taking out time. Really a very great session. Lots that we have learned today. I must say a weekend really very well spent. Thank you so much. And thank you all the audience for coming here, gracing us with your presence. Thank you so much, everyone. Look forward to see you in the upcoming sessions.
Thank you for inviting
And
me.
everyone, take care, stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shachaf. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.